Hey everybody, welcome back. And today I'll be discussing soap operas. Yes, I know not many people are interested in those, but a lot of people don't know that what they watch at night is actually a soap opera as well. Those things known as primetime dramas such as ER, Chicago Hope. I mean, I might have that wrong. I know it's Chicago PD, Fire, and Medical. I want to say there used to be one known as Chicago Hope. But anyways, this is focused on the idea of the daytime dramas rather than the primetime ones, and how I got into them and why I still watch them to this day. When let's start with the obvious. Why did I get into the daytime dramas? Well, I was a kid and I wasn't in school yet, and there wasn't anything really on TV. So I was watching game shows, news. I mean, for me, my game shows, I had The Price is Right as a regular basis. And Young and the Restless when I was really young. And then the news would come on. And in that time, I'd actually play Super Mario Brothers. Well, then after that, for some reason, I caught on to All My Children, One Life to Live, and General Hospital, and just fell in love with them. And for me, there was no stopping them. If I could catch them, I was watching them. Sorry, sunlight reflecting off of screen on the other side of the computer. Anyways, what I okay, Young and the Restless, as good as it was, I couldn't stay hooked on it long enough to get into it, like I did with the ABC soaps that I became addicted to. With All My Children, I loved the fact that you had the Chandlers and you had the other families in this competition. And then the children later on, like Kendall and Bianca, especially, and their relationship. And many don't realize that before she became the vampire slayer on the WB and what eventually became the CW, Sarah Michelle Gellar was on the All My Children as Erica Kane's oldest daughter, Kendall, who was put up for adoption, and she didn't even realize that her own daughter was working for her until it came out, and it caused a big nightmare in the process. And I've watched, and you can find this clip on YouTube, and I recommend it because it's one of the greatest reveals I've seen done that way in the drama in that particular scene, because it's not the "oh I love you" moment or "oh how nice" moment. No, it's actually a cruel moment. And then you got, but I liked how it grew over time and they evolved. Then you got the person who replaced Sarah in the role of Kendall, and then you got Bianca who switched over to Eden. Uh, Bianca's replacement was Eden something. Sorry, I forget the names. Sorry, I forget their names at times. And the replacement, Bianca, actually did really well in the role. and you couldn't really tell the difference in the switch because she kept the acting so close that it just seemed like they just moved along. Now, JR, the JR who lasted until the end of the series was not the original JR. That JR that lasted until the end of the series, well, wait a minute, he might have been, I might have that wrong. But Jacob Young is the one who plays J.R. Chandler, Adam Chandler, and Dixie's son. What makes it interesting is J.R. is every bit as the father's image that you can get, even though at times he has trace amounts of Dixie show through. He is more his father than any character on that show ever was that I could see. You also had Zach, and you had Zach and Kendall. You had Greenlee. The person who plays Greenlee would go on to General Hospital to become Hayden Barnes and turn out to be Elizabeth's half sister. It turns out that one I want to say was actually bad writing, given Elizabeth's established history in it, with the way they did it. But with JR, the person that I know is playing him for so long and went on to the end of the series is Jacob Young. He was actually lucky number 2 on General Hospital, taking over the role when Jonathan Jackson left. And it was actually really well done. But I wasn't a fan of him as Lucky because the character change in him was so drastic, and we understood why it happened. You can find clips on there explaining why, things like that, but no, I was not a fan. And also, look up Soap Central and SoapNet. You can actually look up dates specifically to soap operas. If you ever want to know what was going on back in the past to cause current things at times, or why people preferred older episodes, I recommend going to those sites and reading their reading their summaries of that day's episodes, and you'll see why the soaps of the older days were better. At least in my view. Once today, they've gotten better than they have been, but they're not as good still as they were before. And now, also, with the recent fun, but like I said, after the whole Jacob Young thing and the Hayden that became Greenlee, well, like I said, One Life to Live was good for a kicker, and then you had One Life to Live. One Life to Live I enjoyed because I liked Jessica Buchanan when I was younger. As I grew up, I got to see her growing up in that role. It felt like, and the actress was the same for so long. Well, in 2002, 2003, they switched the actresses from Erin Torpe. Hopefully, I'm saying that name right. Sorry, I'm going off of the spelling on it. To Bree Williamson. Bree was really good in the role and made the role her own. But the reason why I'm still a big Erin fan in the two's place is because Aaron was better at it, and because Aaron was able to get the emotional state that you looked for a lot of times. Whereas Bree, Bree did a lot of the characters acting. I mean, she got the emotional state, but hers were more focused in the anger and the sadness states, not just in general emotions. Plus, with Aaron, we got to learn a lot about the character as she got older. So, like I said, we got to grow up with her, so we got to understand her more. And then there's the Blair Kramer character. I'm a big Todd and Blair fan, and it hurt a lot when they replaced Roger Howarth with Trevor St. John for me, because I was actually enjoying that Todd Manning specifically, because Todd, yeah, he was a jerk no matter what day of the week you picked him on. But if you got him in just the right moments, there were three things you knew about him. One, you would always remember what he did to Marty Saber. Two, he came to regret that moment. And three, for those he truly loved, such as his children and his wife, or whoever he was with at that time, that he cared about, he would die for them. And I've seen multiple videos that have shown this, but one video I think somebody should make, and this is only because I'm not sure how to put the clips together for it in a way to make it work, or I'd probably do it myself, is using Bryan Adams' Everything I Do It For You, or All for Love, All for Love from the Three Musketeers soundtrack. Bryan Adams, Sting, and Rod Stewart. I think those two were both a Todd and Blair set. For those who were Todd and Taya fans, the couple was nice, but Victor and Taya made more sense together. Or when Victor thought he was Todd, they made more sense together because there were still subtle differences in the Todd characters that I noticed, and others noticed back then as well. That later on, when the reveal came, that when they decided to do the Roger Howarth with Todd Manning having a twin, yeah, it didn't affect us as badly because, hey, that actually kind of makes sense in some way for why, when they switched, Trevor St. John's version of Todd had a slightly different personality to it. Now, we'll go, and like I said, and then there was John and Natalie on the show. John McBain, who went on to General Hospital to play, I think he's on his third Doctor role now. And um, and he's played by Michael Easton. Um, Natalie, sorry, I forget who played her, but who was the lost twin of Jessica Buchanan. Now that one did come out of nowhere and threw fans for a loop, caused some uproar. I remember some people I knew that watched the show that wondered who would have thought of this as an idea and why. But The explanation they gave did kind of make sense in a twist, but it was just wrong to do. Also, the Victor Lord Sr., Vicky's father, Vicky and Todd's, and Vicky, Todd, Tina, and Victor Lord Jr.'s, aka Todd Manning #2, his father, coming back as much as he did, made no sense. The man was supposed to have died so many years ago. And yet he was back in, I think it was the 90s. Or, I know in the 90s, one of Vicky's personalities with Todd Manning around during the early days was actually Victor Lord Sr. when it was her darkest personality. Well, then she got fixed again for probably, I don't know how many times she had it done by now to become what they call integrated, her other personalities. But it's also when Todd was finding out he was going to be a father to his first child, and it wasn't Star Manning. Before any of you start to think that, because before that, Todd had actually gotten Blair pregnant. Only Blair didn't know it. She was trying to scam Todd, and she was faking a pregnancy. But Todd found out through Tina and decided to test her. And the test came back positive. Well, during this time, it was working out. They thought they were going to have a child. Todd found out from Vicky what Victor Sr. had done. And let's just say what he did, there are many laws against. And he'd be nowhere near a child today because of it. Because, well, anyways. Well, then he died later on. And instead of leaving anything to to all of his children, he left money to Vicky immediately. And then upon his 21st birthday, he left it to his unnamed heir, his unnamed boy heir, an equal share of the money that Vicky had got. He actually cut out Tina and Victor Lord Jr. But to be fair, Victor Lord Jr. didn't get a fair shake because they didn't know about him. They only knew about Todd. Tina, he knew about. Tina lived with him, and he did nothing for that child. Which could be why she grew up a hateful little brat. And a con woman of sorts. With major father issues. Well, she got Irene's diary and started going through the pages trying to figure out who the father was. Who the child was. But she was going to have somebody pose in the place. Given this is back in the 90s, keep that in mind. Well, Blair got the diary. She figured it out who the heir was, even with the missing page. And found out it was Todd. So she actually got the connection through that, and then set up the marriage point, and then got pregnant by chance. And like I said, they were all happy going through the marriage thing. Through that. But then Todd found out that they had faked, that she had initially faked the pregnancy. just lucked into the day that he asked for the check after they lost the child due to a harbor when she was down the pier and got robbed. And she got knocked into a post, which caused her to hit her stomach, and she lost the baby. Well, you move on down the road, they had Star. During this time, Todd was gone, and Blair got a present from Todd. It was a gift. A picture of a star with, again, you can find this on YouTube, and it was talking about a gift for the baby to our little star. And she tells Todd, and she talks out loud that Todd had named their child. And that's actually how they get the name Star. Also, another point of fact, the Star Manning name. People spell it wrong. I know a lot of people want to believe it's Star, like a star in the sky, which would make sense. But when Star signed her name on anything, there was always two R's at the end of the name Star, not one. And that's also how Todd and Blair signed it. You can see this in other areas again. But, anyways, moving on. Okay, when One Life to Live came to an end, they did a brief crossover with General Hospital, which was actually smart because it gave them a chance to keep control of the characters and the actors who were there on ABC instead of moving them straight to CBS, NBC, or somewhere else that could use the stars and get the ratings up based on the names. But I especially loved the fact that they used Todd, Star, and Blair for it. Because with Blair and Carly, I saw a number of similarities with their characters. They didn't have it easy to begin with. They actually worked to prove and get what they got. And their love lives would go up and down so fast that it would make you wonder what was happening this week with it. Sometimes even what was happening the next day with it, the way they fought. But now, on to General Hospital, which is coming up on the longest running, well, according to a news report I saw, well, a news report article type thing I saw online the other day. As of April 1st this year, supposedly, it's going to be the longest running soap opera in U.S. history at 58 years, and it's still going. Keep this in mind. Rick Springfield, I forget his name now. John Stamos, guy who plays Frisco on General Hospital, is actually a singer in real life, also. Okay, Rick Springfield on General Hospital played a doctor. Just did his music career, came back occasionally as that doctor. had a son that had two sons on the show, character-wise, that took the medical field by storm and are just as good, if not better, than his character. And a lot of the characters on the show continue a descendant line rather than just popping up with new characters here and there. So that helps to keep a show going, in my view. But it also helps that when they do bring in new characters, and this is where I think the show's been messing up recently, they don't kill them instantly. In recent years, when they've created new characters, like Dev, the little teenager from Turkey, I think it was, he was on the show, I think it was 4 years. And they killed him off. Killing off Morgan Corinthos, that was a bad idea. Now, saying goodbye to Mike Corinthos, Sonny's father on the show, that was genius in the way they did it. Also, I like the way they've been doing the ghosts. When they do them where, like with Emily and Courtney, the ghosts come more recently, and it's either to help out with a certain situation, or it's to help people actually leave. When they leave, the ghosts come to help them move on to the afterlife. But anyways, General Hospital was supposed to revolve around the hospital in general, or for the majority of it. But later on, it came to revolve around the mafia and others as well, and then moved on and worked everything out. In the 90s, the mob was a big part of it. In the early 2000s, mob and the police. But somewhere in the 2010s and after, when One Life to Live and All My Children ended, they decided to throw in anything they could at the time. It stopped being about the writing and just seeing what they could put together and keeping the stars they had. Because the former star Manning became Kiki Jerome for a while before she decided to move on, and we got the replacement, who was very good and actually made the character her own, and the character evolved to a point, and then they killed her off when she started evolving into a person. Then there was the case of Franco, and this one was the one I severely disagreed with people. He was a serial killer when he first started, who would come into town, screw with Jason Morgan, then leave. That was his whole thing. He had to screw with Jason, then leave. It was about proving he was better. Well, then, when they did The Shift and One Life to Live ended, Roger Howard took over the role. They decided, hey, you know what? Let's redeem the character like we did with Todd Manning. There was a major difference in this. With Franco, people liked him as a villain. With Todd Manning, they didn't expect his character to get liked as quickly as he did and last as long. His character wasn't expected to make it past the storyline of Marty's rape and them doing the trial. He was expected to die in that little car wreck deal, if not in prison, at best. Now, as for the other side of that, with Franco, he came in, did his thing, and he left. It made him a good villain. It made him like the other villains that could actually survive. because they didn't stay long enough to get killed. But then he decided, hey, you know what? Redeem them with Roger Howard's version. He came in. Oh, I had this brain tumor. It made me kill people. Yes, it affected the aggression. It doesn't mean he's supposed to love the killing as much as he did, or plan out rapes and other things that he did. And then magically, oh, I didn't order a rape. I didn't order for this. And what happened to Michael in prison? No. You only saw half the video. Reveals the rest of the video, which says, I don't want you to do anything to this kid. You're to protect him. And that didn't work out. Why? You had a convict in prison to watch over a young boy. Yeah, that went over well. With the odds that people know about, with the statistics that people know about in prisons. But anyways, moving on. This show is still running. This show is the one I enjoyed the most since I was a kid. I liked the story of the mafia and the normal people and the rich people and how everybody all blended together, yet they could be separate at the same time. And like I said, with the character of Carly Taranthos, she's especially one of my favorites. And because she started off as a villainous type character who wanted revenge against her adoptive mother for putting her up for adoption, which led to her upbringing being a nightmare for so long, and her getting until her and her adoptive mother moved. Then she left Virginia. She left her mother, her adoptive, and I can't remember if Virginia, the adoptive mother, died or if Carly turned 18 and decided to leave. But either way, she went to her stepfather. She went to the guy who was her adoptive stepfather, known as Frank Benson. Told him she wanted to know about who her mother was. She found out about Bobby Spencer and the history, apparently. Or at least in this revised version they did recently. She found out about Bobby Spencer. She didn't know all of the stuff that I remember in the past. Part of it. She did know part of it. That Bobby put her up for adoption when she was young. Stuff like that. She didn't know the particulars of it. But Carly has been played by 4 different actresses, 3 of which people will love no matter what, apparently. And the fourth, the fourth, which is technically the 3rd Carly in the series, people want to forget she ever existed, and I don't blame them because I wasn't a fan, but I thought it was just me. Carly number 1, or as I call her, the introductory Carly, is Sarah Joy Brown. Or is it Sarah Brown Joy? I forget. Sorry. Not mean to get this wrong. But anyways, she would play Carly for the introductory phase of it. Go into the 2000s with her. She introduced us to Carly, did the revenge phase on Bobby, then grew. Started trying to find herself and figuring out what she wanted in her life. But she didn't exactly get everything in that point. Well, this person would eventually come back after leaving for so long, and I think it was 2008 or 2009. I know for certain she was there. She would play the mob. She would play a mob princess, as it's referred to, but because she wasn't exactly the leader, but she was the one in charge. She'd play the person known as Claudia Zaccara, and that role it wouldn't last long, but it would be a good one for her because it was a darker role from Carly, but at times you could still see the initial Carly experience coming out. Now with Carly number two, which is my personal favorite, played by Indiana's own Tamara Braun. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention a little thing about the previous about Carly number one. Before she did that, she actually did a children's superhero show. I want to say, yeah, I want to say it was the VR Trooper series that she did. It might have been Beetleborgs. I'm pretty sure it was VR Troopers, though. But if you look on there, it's not hard to notice her. You can tell it's her just by looking at her. Look, you can look it up for TV intros on kid shows, and you'll find it, and you'll see it. It's her. Now with, like I said, Carly number two, it's Indiana's own Tamara Braun. And I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, even though I'm probably not. And this one was my personal favorite of the Carlys because one, she didn't take any crap from anybody. Two, she would she knew what she wanted, and she wasn't afraid to let you know what she was feeling at the time she was feeling it. And for four, this one seemed like the one that could show the most emotion of all of the Carlys without without going to none to fully emotional. She'd be right in the middle and then show the emotion when it was needed as it was needed. She could actually do it. And like I said, she's my personal favorite. But another thing I enjoyed about this one, she was one of the Carlys that actually cared more about her family than her love life. Yeah, they all cared for the children, but she cared for the children also, even when her and Sonny were fighting. They could be down each other's throats. She'd be looking at Christina and anybody else's children and be wanting to make sure they were alright. She also tried to make sure Courtney was alright, even if her and Sonny were on opposite sides. This Carly is the one who they had a fake death for, or they had a death for, and she came back. I tried to find all the clips for this one on YouTube, couldn't, but I did enjoy it with what I could find. But this Carly is also the one who led into Carly number three, where she started to have a mental break. The first time the mental break started was due to AJ Quartermain kidnapping Michael when he was a little kid. He took Christina and Morgan as well, but he had them returned. Michael he kept. He continued to try to keep, knowing in part how crazy it was making Carly, but also he was sticking it to Sonny, and Faith was helping because she knew if Carly was gone, Sonny tended to have a way of straying, and she was going to try and sneak in and get Sonny to sleep with her so that she could take over power. Because the character of Faith, the one thing she loved was power, and if she couldn't get it one way, she was going to get it another. One thing I really loved was and this was actually a pre-part to this, before Morgan was born, Carly was pregnant, just got done with a doctor's appointment. She came out of the hospital, going down the elevator. Faith was in the elevator with her. Made a comment about the only reason she wasn't hurting Carly in any way is because she was pregnant with Morgan, and talked about even after Morgan was born how she might take Morgan and other things. Carly takes the tip of an umbrella, sticks it to her throat, Two-Face's throat, and tells her if she ever mentions her kids or anything about threatening or harming them again, that umbrella wouldn't stop there. Or that's the essential point of it. Basically, she'd kill her. And personally, I was kind of voting for it at the time. Just because I enjoyed the particular anger in that moment. But also because later on, when I go back and watch it, I just think it's a funny moment in it. But anyways, I like how long the show's been going, how it can at least attempt to try to create new storylines branching off from older ones. And how some of the older ones will come back in some way. There was a person on Twitter who asked recently if there were any characters with the show having run as long as it has, what character I would like to see return. And I told them there was too many to list. But one of the main ones I'd like to see return, that's because she was a staple in the show for so long, Robin. Kimberly McCullough, despite having moved behind the camera rather than being in front of it, was on the show for so long, and we got to see her basically do the same thing Aaron Torpe and did on One Life to Live, and Alyssa Milano did on Who's the Boss. We got to watch them grow up on camera, basically, on the shows they were on. And to me, that's more important because it gives a true connection to the character and the person in that way. So I would like to see the Scorpios come back complete, as well as the Spencers. And personally, Lucky, as much as JJ or Jonathan Jackson, JJ is what I started referring to him as at one point. But anyways, sorry, sunlight gave me a bit of a headache there. But with JJ or Jonathan Jackson, as good As he started out last time, he ended up really bad writing since. And given how you did the roles last time, you made him a recovering alcoholic. You made him a recovering alcoholic. His problem wasn't alcohol. His problem is pills. That's why when he was talking to Christina, he knew so much about what she was on. When Christina thought they were just supplements. Because those were actually the pills prescribed to him when he was on the force and had to take time off. So, get your story straight when you're doing the writing. When you're doing that. Is what I got to say to the writers. Also, if you're going to do the bringing them back like that, I recommend Julie Marie Berman as Lulu, because Emily Ryan's good, gotten better from when she started, but it still doesn't feel right. And with Lucky, I would rather see Greg Vaughn, or Vaughn, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, than Jacob Young or Jonathan Jackson, though Jonathan Jackson would make a good second. But again, Spencer's, the Spencers, the Scorpios, and Joneses, and then put Anna in with the Scorpios because she was at one time, and the Cassadines, and then do like one big dinner thing. And with the Cassadines, you put the Davis family in before you even think about leaving them out. So that way you get three of the biggest families together. You get three of the major families together that all have a personal connection to each other in some way. Also, another idea you guys might have, if you're going to keep Michael Easton in the role he's in, bring Hayden back. That would make a lot of sense. So that her and Violet can be together. So that her and Violet can be together. And also, if you really wanted to make things interesting, bring One Life to Live's characters back, because with Roger Howarth not being Todd Manning anymore, with Roger Howarth not being Franco anymore, because you killed his character, you can play on this. And please, don't do a fake death for him. Let Franco be dead this time if you're going to keep him like he was. But anyways, back to the point there. Roger Howarth could be Todd Manning. You could bring Alderson back as Star. Bring in Blair if she's bring in Cassie DePavia as Blair if she's not busy. Bring in the Manning family in general. Come on, you could do the cross soaps and actually connect and make up something new out of it. Because AMC, All My Children, however you want to call it, is basically moving to prime time with that new series, Pine Valley. So that leaves an opening. And doing GMA 3 and then the judge thing in General Hospital, it's kind of like leaving an opening there. You could move the judge stuff after General Hospital because it does two of them to make up a full hour, or or move the GMA 3 back an hour and do it. And here's what you do: you do One Life to Live, General Hospital, and then the judge can cover the next hour, and there you go. Or at least where I live, the judge could do it. The show that's on, I think it's Judge Judy that's on at that time. And it's on when it is. Could be on after, and it could cover that time frame and still be good. Nobody'd have to worry. Well, people, let me know what your thoughts are on the soap operas, the daytime dramas. Also, your thoughts on any of the shows, the actors and actresses involved in those shows, and from those shows. It doesn't have to be the ones I mentioned in specific. It could be Young and the Restless, Old and Beautiful, any of the ones that were canceled in the past. What were your favorite characters? Who were ones you would like to see come back to shows if they were to bring them back? And what are your thoughts on on All My Children's revival with this show called Pine Valley that they're going to be doing as a primetime supposedly? Leave it in the comments, and I look forward to next time.